up, everybody? Welcome to episode 9 of Shots on Target with your host, Brad Betts, where we analyze the goal market from all the top matches of the day. We take a look at the world of football, so we don't leave anything untouched. Today is Thursday, September 5th. Today we're going to look at a historical look at Spain's La Liga, drop in there really quickly, take an overview of Israel's Leumit League, which kicks off today at 11 a.m. We're also going to then look over at the UEFA Nations League, which also kicks off at 11 a.m., followed by a best bet in Brazil, which kicks off much later in the day. So let's dive in. Well, Spain come in week 1 scoring 26 goals. If you remember, I tweeted out or posted on X that they came out flying to start the season. 9-1 on the BTTS, and 5-5 on the over 2.5. So we did see both teams to score, but the overall total amount of goals wasn't there in comparison to most other leagues. Week 2, just 22 goals, so dropped a little bit, and that was BTTS in 4 of 6, over 2.5 and 6 of 4. So less BTTS, more goals, kind of flipping back and forth to even out those numbers. Then we look at week 3, all the way down to just 18 goals. And one of those matches had 7 goals. So that was 11 goals for all the rest of the teams. But that was a 9-game week in week 3. There was one fixture that was left out. So yeah, it's a little bit under, but it's pretty close to that 22. Then week 4, just 23 goals. An ugly 3-7 and 3-7. So we went 3-6, 3-6, 3-7, 3-7 the last 2 weeks. Scoring started really hot, has since trailed off quite significantly. And if you look at last year's statistics, which were BTTS at 49% and over 2.5 at just 45%, these numbers are really correlated with those fixtures last year. So that looks like that first week was a bit of an anomaly, and then it kind of trailed off to have a little bit more regularity, even though they were almost further down. So they regressed even further. So we do need to make sure that they kick that scoring back up. However, there were some teams, individual teams in Spain's La Liga that we do want to be mindful of, both on the good end and the bad end. So we have Villarreal, who come in BTTS in 4 of their first 4. They have over 2.5 in 3 of their first 4. You have Celta Vigo, BTTS, and over 2.5 in 4 of their first 4. Barcelona, 4-0 to the over 2.5, 3-1 to the BTTS. Those 3 teams are very similar teams last year that performed on the high end of the performers in La Liga. So those are 3 teams that we want to be mindful of. And then you also have Rayo Vallecano, who started pretty well. They've scored in some matches that we're surprised that they've scored in, but they're getting BTTS and over 2.5 in 3 of their first 4. So those teams are doing really well. And on the counter end, we have Espanyol, 1-3 to the BTTS, 1-3 to the over 2.5. Mallorca, 1-3 to the BTTS, and 0-4 to the over 2.5. So those are squads we don't necessarily want to look at. I know Mallorca will typically have lines at like minus 150 for an over 1.5. So be very careful with your bets on Mallorca. So let's then take a look now at the Israel Leumit League, or the National League, depending on what book you have. They say this league differently, but both are the same league. It's the second flight of Israel. Starting this season, they've only had 15 games, just under 2 weeks. The BTTS has hit 13-2. That means there's only 2 teams, because one team scored in both of those that they didn't find the BTS. 2 teams only managed to not score one time. So we have seen regular scoring on both ends. The over 2.5 is at 11-4. These are really, really high numbers. The first there's 4 matches today at 11 o'clock. So be mindful of this performing league right now. We don't necessarily want to be throwing all of our chips in this basket, but if this league continues to score, you absolutely must put this league in the forefront of your betting. A lot of times in the second flight of these leagues throughout the world, you can find a huge competitive advantage because people aren't really paying attention to them like they are the top leagues. So let's be mindful of this league. There are some great matches today, but the lines are starting to trickle up. So maybe look at those live opportunities, but the scoring is just tremendous right now. Next, let's take a look at the UEFA's Nations League. We have a best bet for today, which we had on our bulletin board yesterday, showing that line movement. Well, let's do a little update before we dive in to where that line movement is now. I told you that if it got anywhere below minus 200, it was going to be a profitable bet. It should probably be around minus 200. Woke up this morning, minus 200 on FanDuel, minus 210 on DraftKings, and it was at minus 190 on MGM and has since trickled down to minus 175. So if you're looking to take the ML, some of those lines, like I mentioned in the video yesterday, would overnight trickle down a little bit. So you have yesterday where a lot of people are looking ahead. The smart people are trying to get an edge. Books already know that. So they're pricing those lines accordingly. Then the sharps overnight will trickle those lines down, bet them down to a more comfortable line before the public then takes over again and pushes those lines back up. So be mindful. That minus 175 in Spain right now is pretty comfortable if you're looking at a BTTS. I have the minus 160 and I love that line. So if you want to drop in on that money line, I understand it's juicy, but I still believe that at minus 175, the statistical probability of coming in leaves us profitable on the back end if we were to play this over and over and over again. And that's why I'm comfortable with this number. So let's jump into a few of the other games I want to highlight because we have a lot of movement. I'm not necessarily sure what's going to happen. You look at Portugal, the last 3 matches of the Euros couldn't score at all. And those, yeah, they had a couple decent matchups. There was a 3rd place game. There was the last game of the group stage. So there are situations that factor into why they didn't score. But they score regularly. You expect them to come out here and score in today's match. Croatia can't keep a clean sheet. They're playing Croatia at 11:45, Portugal is. And, you know, with Portugal, you kind of expect them to concede. Typically, they're not a team that's just going to be gung-ho, all-out attack. They're going to be conservative. However, we don't know what they're going to line up like. Ronaldo might be in the squad. If he's in the squad right now, he's just catastrophic to the offensive progression. Yes, he could score, but he gets chance after chance after chance. Pepe's gone from the back line. Not sure how they're going to sort in, but I do believe that Portugal should get the best of Croatia today. Based on how Croatia performed in the Euros, they do love to score. Croatia's a regular on the score sheet. They tend to overperform. They have a lot of guys in their team with a lot of camaraderie. We gave a long story on Croatia, and all those men who play for their team have been playing for Croatia for a number of years. It does give a leg edge. However, Portugal is going to be very comfortable at home. In the first game of these Nations League, I expect conservative play until there's a bit of separation between the squad. Portugal gets up, then they have a chance to counter, maybe they get 2, then they go for more. But they're not going to overly expose themselves on the first game of the season, especially against a team like Croatia. They're going to, I would imagine, look for that 1-0, 2-1 type of victory. Croatia is just so tricky. They play a little bit more attacking than you expect. We'll see if Modric is on the field. If he is, that gives us a better chance, but I don't necessarily know. I mean, he's approaching 40. You have a number of other attackers. They're going to be strong coming from the left back with Gvardiol bombing forward. But with Croatia, we don't necessarily know what to expect on this first game. So I do expect BTTS, but maybe look for an opportunity live to bet on a Portugal line, considering that they're at home. Next, Scotland and Poland. Another 2 teams that are very interesting. Scotland is tough to predict. Before the Euros, they were coming in hot, scoring in just about every home match, and they love to concede. But during the Euros, it was one of the worst teams that I saw. They scored on own goals against the run of play. They never looked good. They looked like losing every single game. So they're taking on a Poland squad who doesn't necessarily look that much better. They struggled at the Euros, but they were a little bit better than Scotland, playing away from home. If Lewandowski's in the lineup, you would kind of expect Poland to be able to score. I'm not sure how this game ends. I do see a 1-1 type of finish, but again, it could be a 0-0. If one team scores, I expect the other team to score. So I'll be looking to test that market live. Next, we have Denmark and Switzerland. Denmark come in right now without their top striker, Rasmus Højlund, Manchester United. So that should affect them on the offensive end. Christian Eriksen, not in great form right now as well. Those are their two top offensive players that would be playing through the middle. Denmark is playing a Swiss side right now who's really overperforming. They look great. Their unit, I'm not sure if they're going to have Granit Xhaka in the middle. If he is in there with Mbola up top, Vargas on one side, you expect them to be comfortable on the offensive end. Denmark was favored quite significantly. You could take the Swiss draw no bet around minus 155, but overnight that line is moved. It's getting closer to even money, so it does look like Swiss do have the advantage. If you have an even money line with one team at home, you automatically know that the favorite is technically away. So on that match, I see it low scoring. However, Denmark, they could really let the floodgates just open, or they could keep it really tight. It just depends on what's the gameplay like with Switzerland and who they field. So I don't know who's going to be on the field. I do want to mention it, but I don't know what's going to happen until I at least see one match under my belt. We talked about Spain and Serbia. I like the Spain money line. I do like them to score over 1.5 goals, but I don't like it at that line as much as I like the Spain money line at minus 175, which is a play of the day. Go back to yesterday's video if you want to highlight more. Now, without further ado, we've touched on, well, I guess right before that, I do want to mention San Marino. Little squad San Marino. They've never won a competitive fixture in their entire career existence that I can see. They're playing at home today against Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein is a tiny little bit of a favorite, and they're playing away from home. But if you look at this last fixture, which they played recently, San Marino got the better of them away from home. They had an EXG about 2.25. Liechtenstein was damn near down like 0.2. They struggled. So if San Marino is ever going to get a result, ever, it could happen today. So I do want to be mindful of that. I cheer for this tiny little country off the coast of Europe. I think it's off the coast of the UK, but just be mindful that there's potential there. And if San Marino scores, maybe look for Liechtenstein to equalize because of that porous record. Now, let's jump into my best bet, play of the day. We're headed back to Brazil's Serie A for a match between Cuiabá and Juventude. Cuiabá come in scoring in 15 of their last 19 matches. That's pretty solid numbers, especially in a league like Brazil's Serie A, from a team that's down in the bottom end of the table. They've conceded in 14 straight coming into it. Regular production, everybody's putting goals in on them. They've hit both teams to score in 11 of their last 14 matches. They're taking on a Juventude squad who scored in 10 straight matches and 27 of their last 30. That's 90% of their last 30 matches. Regular production. But then you look at them defensively. Not looking that great this season. They're also down at the bottom of the table. They've conceded in 11 straight matches coming into it and 16 straight away from home. Being away from home, playing against a Cuiabá side who can't keep a clean sheet as well. I think the best bet for this is that both teams should be able to score. And I got that at a crazy plus 110. Plus money on this bet. Again, we're going to take it as a half a unit bet while we're over the international break. But for half of a unit at plus money with these type of statistics, it's just a no-brainer for our play of the day. Thanks again for coming again today. Let me know your thoughts. I appreciate everybody for coming. Kylie, I know you had questions. Brad Morris, thanks for being here. I appreciate, so the Spain team total has been coming down. It's hovering around minus 140, minus 145. We'll see where that is at kickoff. The Bolivia game, not sure about a few of those other matches, especially in South America or in the Asian qualifiers. I'm not going to lie, I don't put a lot of faith in those matches because of the fishy decisions that are constantly made. I don't feel comfortable putting my money in a place where I don't feel like we're getting correct representation all the time. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I have seen especially in the Asian qualifiers, decisions are made that leave your head scratching. So be very cautious with any of those bets. Maybe look at something live. There's a match that starts at 11 between Qatar and UAE, both teams who find the net regularly. But again, it's the first match against two teams that know each other well. So yeah, you would expect them to come out on fire, but when they're top teams in Asia, sometimes they sit back in deeply. With Bolivia specifically, I need to make sure I have the correct opponent. We have, where are we? I have to search this. By the way, if you're ever using an app to search matches, FOTMOB. It's going to change your life. FOTMOB. So today, Bolivia is playing Venezuela. Venezuela is actually coming in a really good run of form. If you look, wins against Mexico is pretty solid. In Jamaica, who's struggling right now, they have a lot of internal strife amongst their team. A lot of not paid players, not good uniforms. They're not even. They don't even have the correct personnel to support the players at these games. They're not providing travel a lot of times, so you need to be careful with Jamaica. But Bolivia, they look horrible. So if you are looking at anything, I'm not sure what that line is, but I would look maybe at a Venezuela line, maybe a draw no bet, maybe a double chance. That's what looks comfortable to me, Kylie. Not necessarily the best money line better. I find that my best bets are in the goal market. Even though I like Spain today based on how they perform, especially on the offensive end, I do think that there is still opportunity in the money lines in international play because there's just not as much scoring like you see in club ball or any relative facts that can give us a clear understanding of how they perform. Again, thanks again for being here today. Another labor-intensive episode. A few leagues we want to highlight and look at while the match or while the day is going on. And then our best bet at the end of the day. We're going to be back tomorrow to highlight a few leagues as well as maybe a best bet or two for this weekend. We're going to continue to keep things light during the international break, as I mentioned before, because it's just sketchy. This concludes Episode 9 of Shots on Target with your host, Brad Betts, where we analyze the world of football in the goal market, and we'll be back on Friday with another episode. Thanks again.